Clearly, Democrats lost terribly in the worst way ever.
We should be focused like a laser on delivering the basics and ignore the fashionable nonsense. I felt like the Biden administration did make fatal miscalculations that cost us the election. Abolishing prisons or abolishing the police or abolishing ICE. Those ideas do not come from working class people from places like the Bronx. Those ideas typically come from activists and academics who are out of touch with working class people.
Welcome back to AllStarBuzz. Thank you for joining us. Before we start, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us grow. Now, let's begin. Morning Joe had quite the day. First, a Democrat congressman from New York left Joe and Mika stunned as he absolutely destroyed Biden and the Democrat Party for their idiotic, woke, virtue-signaling policies that led to their election disaster. This guy dropped nuke after nuke on Biden and the Democrats, leaving Joe and Mika speechless. Then they invited some Democrat podcasters onto the show, and they also laid into Biden, Kamala, and the Democrats. As always, like the video and subscribe to the channel. But where I want to start is with the Democrat congressman calling out his own party for being horrendously out of touch and failing to understand the absolute basics of what people expect from their government. Watch this.
Look, for me, the Democratic Party should have a simple mission, which is to lower costs, lower crime rates, make government work for the people rather than for the interest groups. And we have to recognize that working class voters of color are largely in the center on issues like public safety and border security. And we have to meet them where they are. If we swing the pendulum too far to the left, we risk alienating working class people of color. And working class people of color are no different from most Americans. Most Americans want the basics, an affordable cost of living, safe streets, secure borders. And so we should be focused like a laser on delivering the basics and ignore the fashionable nonsense that has taken hold in our politics.
Let me start by saying this. That's the nicest thing the congressman says about the Democrats in this entire segment. So, brace yourself. But what he said is exactly what I've been screaming, what everyone's been screaming. The Democrat Party is completely void of common sense. They've chosen to ignore everything people actually care about and instead focus on what he called fashionable issues. Take the crisis with the fires in Los Angeles, for example. Look at all that tax money they've spent prioritizing the dignity of homeless people, giving free health care to illegal immigrants, handing out clean needles and crack pipes so drug addicts can get high safely, and funding diversity initiatives. Oh, and let's not forget, the city of LA removed all U-turn signs because the trans community said they were transphobic. And what do they get for all these noble pursuits? A fire department that doesn't work. Democrat policies are a joke. No human should be illegal. Let's just open the borders. And their brilliant idea to make crime-ridden communities feel safer? Let's remove all the cops. It's madness. Because, according to them, the police are the real problem. Oh, and let's not forget, we should let our kids play around with their gender, inject themselves with puberty blockers and hormones, and get irreversible surgeries because we want our kids to be happy. It's insanity.
When you say swing too far to the left, what do you mean specifically?
Well, in the case of the 2024 election, it was immigration. As I've said repeatedly, I felt the president did too little, too late to secure the border, and we paid a heavy price in the 2024 election. For me, both inflation and immigration were the leading causes of Democratic defeat in 2024. And in the case of immigration, I felt like the Biden administration did make fatal miscalculations that cost us the election.
Now, this is where he directly blames Joe Biden and his ridiculously out-of-touch policies for the Democrats' horrendous loss. He says, let Kamala Harris tell it there's nothing she would have done differently. And they're surprised that when people heard that, they said, oh God, these people just ruined my life for the past 4 years, and now their candidate is saying they're not going to do anything differently? Until his last day in office, Joe Biden was adamant that he had done wonderful things for the country. But if the rest of the party had been talking like this congressman, they might have had a better chance. The problem? They couldn't speak out against Biden and his failures because they were all complicit. They were the same ones telling us up and down for 3.5 years. The man is fine. The man is in charge. The man is sharp. His policies are great. Inflation is transitory. The border isn't an issue. So nobody in the media or the Democrat Party could call this out without exposing themselves for covering up a massive scandal. Now, this is where he drops a nuke on the Democrat Party, leaving them in ashes sand, leaving everyone on Morning Joe completely speechless. Watch this.
Yeah, so I spoke to an activist who was advocating for abolishing the police, and I said, let me get this straight. You want to conduct a social experiment on the lowest income communities of color in places like the Bronx. And what happens if that experiment goes badly? What happens if it leads to an outbreak of gun violence and gang violence and youth violence? Like, you live in a wealthy white neighborhood in an ivory tower, insulated from the consequences of your utopianism, whereas my constituents are poor people of color who have to live with high costs and high crime rates. And we should be speaking to the lived experience of people of color. You know, when you consider some of the most utopian ideas in politics, whether it's abolishing prisons or abolishing the police or abolishing ICE, those ideas do not come from working class people from places like the Bronx. Those ideas typically come from activists and academics who are out of touch with working class people.
Oh my God, can everybody please smash that like button if you enjoyed that epic takedown? I mean, this is what we're always criticizing the ladies of The View for, all these fairy tale Looney Tunes ideas that sound more like a philosophical debate between two professors than actual policies you'd implement in the real world. Sunny Hostin loves to talk about how racist everything is while she lives in her 10-bed, 10-bath New York mansion. Whoopi Goldberg claims she's working class because she works every day on The View and wouldn't do it if she didn't need to, while pulling in an $8 million salary. People in Martha's Vineyard love the idea of open borders until migrants show up in their neighborhoods. Democrats love to talk about defunding the police for regular people while they hire private security for themselves. Democrats love to call border walls racist, but they live in gated communities. Have any of these rich liberals ever talked to people in inner cities dealing with gun violence? Do they think those communities would feel safer if the police were taken off the streets? Of course not. They've convinced themselves that police are bad and racist because it's a fashionable talking point in liberal high society. Democrats push these soft on-crime policies, combine them with defunding the police, and then act shocked when everything descends into chaos. They think because they're college-educated, they know better. They make decisions they claim come from a place of empathy and compassion, but they never once ask the people who'll actually be affected by these policies. It's a joke. Now let's get to the second part of this Morning Joe episode, where they invite some Democrat podcasters on, and again, they proceed to kick the Democrats while they're down. But here's Joe Scarborough saying something that hits the nail on the head. The Democrat brand has made itself joyless and unhappy. I agree. Democrats seem insufferable. They hate everything. They complain about everything. They think they're oppressed. They think everything's unjust. They glorify mental health issues. They glorify obesity. They reject the idea of family. They certainly reject God. And you'd think these people would be happy, right? Wrong. The Democrats are going to keep losing support if the requirement to join their movement is being a giant stick in the mud. Now, listen to them admit that identity politics is dead-end, that the Democrats' racist strategy of putting everyone who looks the same into a box and assuming they all want the same things is over. Watch this.
I was dying laughing because you were describing the difference between the Democratic Party culturally and the Republican Party. As far as, well, by the way, just like the Republican Party is like, yeah, let's go to Madison Square Garden. Yeah, let's go to boxing. Let's do this. And it's so interesting because when, other than of course Barack Obama, when we Republicans would look at Democrats and be like, God, they're just joyless. And it's like, it shouldn't be this easy. They are such downers. And I listened to y'all's podcast, and I just started dying laughing. You guys nailed it. It's a cultural thing, isn't it?
Yeah. If we want to be a party that can win elections, we have to be a party people would want to attend.
I swear, when Kamala Harris brought out Megan Thee Stallion to twerk in front of an arena in Atlanta, it had to be the most racist moment in political history. Well, maybe second to Joe Biden saying, "If you don't vote for me, you ain't black." Every black person should have seen what Kamala did as her saying, "You're too stupid to understand my message. You're too stupid for me to explain what I'm gonna do. So instead, here's some twerking and ass shaking for you. Now, can I get your vote? And it's even worse because she was trying to run on the platform of being a black woman who's relatable to the black community. But we all knew she had zero cultural connection to what the typical black American goes through. It was all a show. But Kamala bringing out Megan Thee Stallion to twerk was basically her asking her advisors, "Black people like that, right? Okay, good, that'll work." And it's the same with Hispanics. Democrats thought Hispanics would be in favor of illegal immigration because, what? They all speak Spanish? Somehow, they didn't realize that American Hispanics don't like losing their jobs to illegal labor. They don't like unsafe streets flooded with illegals who have nowhere to go. They don't like watching their city's social services get drained because all the money's being handed to illegal immigrants. The Democrats are so out of touch, it's almost impressive. How do you even get that clueless? Now, here's where they take a shot at Kamala, but really, it's at the Democrats more broadly for being inauthentic, fake, phony, and completely empty suits.
Assuming people are going to vote for us based on their identity is a loser, and it has always been a loser, and it shouldn't be an assumption anymore. You have to make the case to people, and people without a college degree are now voting together more than, whether they're black, Latino, white, and so we're starting to see that more. So Democrats have to speak to that, and part of it is speaking that language, right? Which is just normal people language. How you talk to people at a bar, at a restaurant, in your own life, like that's the way that people need to talk right now, and Democrats haven't done that, which is why working class people feel so alienated, or one reason at least.
And by the way, it's not about doing some kind of impression of Gen Z. It's not about saying brat or whatever the hell people were trying to say.
Besides a million other valid reasons, this was one of the biggest reasons people hated Kamala Harris. She couldn't just speak like a normal person. She could never answer a question directly. Everything was a long, convoluted word salad. It was like every word was chosen to maximize confusion. She never once sounded like a real person having a genuine, off-the-cuff conversation. And the reason all the Democrats are like this is simple. They've built their entire platform on being respectful, upstanding, compassionate, and empathetic. But here's the thing, they're none of those things, so of course they can't be themselves. It would completely contradict the fake image they're trying to sell. Let's talk about Kamala Harris's flip-flopping for a second. This is someone who literally changed her entire political identity to fit whatever narrative she thought would get her ahead. 4 years ago, she was a tough-on-crime prosecutor who bragged about locking people up. Now, she's suddenly the champion of criminal justice reform and defunding the police. What changed? The political wins, that's what. And it's not just her policies, it's her personality. Kamala Harris is the definition of inauthentic. She's always trying to be whatever she thinks people want her to be, but it comes off as forced and fake. Remember when she awkwardly tried to relate to black voters by talking about her love of weed? Or when she laughed hysterically during serious interviews?
And you see a Trump rally, and people are having a good time at that event, and Trump is mixing it up. And you talked about how do we take on misinformation? How about somebody a Democrat that's doing 2-hour press conferences, that's going everywhere, that can mix it up with everyone, that can go on Joe Rogan, that seems like a good hang. And
doesn't talk like a press release.
And doesn't.
There's everyone already. Everyone's putting their statements out on social media. Write your own posts. Do some press conferences. Sit and talk to people. Go on podcasts. Don't talk like you're just reading your pollster's memo. It's crazy.
And hey, I know everybody liked The West Wing, and everybody thinks of speeches as Abraham Lincoln's second inaugural. Everybody writes their statements like they're crossing the Delaware. They write them like they're doing their own drafts of the Federalist Papers. It's enough. It's not working. Nobody's listening. Nobody cares what we have to say about anything. Donald, we have lost so much credibility with people, and we haven't gotten ability to break through to people.
It's like she's constantly performing, but no one's buying the act. And let's not forget her disastrous campaign. She spent millions of dollars only to drop out before the first primary because she couldn't even get enough support to stay in the race. Then she was picked as Biden's running mate not because of her qualifications, but because she checked the right boxes. And even then, she was kept hidden for most of the campaign because she was such a liability. But here's the thing, Kamala Harris isn't just a bad politician, she's a symbol of everything wrong with the Democrat Party. They're so obsessed with identity politics and virtue signaling that they've completely lost touch with reality. They think they can just slap a label on someone, whether it's first woman of color or first female vice president, and people will automatically support them. But voters aren't stupid. They see through the act. And that's why Kamala Harris is such a disaster. She's not just a bad candidate, she's a walking, talking reminder of how out of touch the Democrats are. They've spent years pushing policies that sound good on paper, but are completely disconnected from the real world. Open borders, defunding the police, radical gender ideology, these aren't just bad ideas, they're dangerous. And Kamala Harris has been at the forefront of pushing them. But here's the kicker, the Democrats don't care. They're so convinced that they're right, they can't even see how badly they're failing. They think they can just keep doubling down on the same failed strategies, and somehow it'll work out. But it won't. People are tired of the lies, the hypocrisy, and the incompetence. They're tired of being told what to think and how to live their lives, and they're ready for change. So, what's next for Kamala Harris? If she runs for president again in 2028, it'll be another disaster. But honestly, that might be the best thing for the country. Because every time she opens her mouth, she reminds people why they don't want Democrats in charge. And that's a lesson we can't afford to forget. Only Kamala Harris could have one set of policies 4 years ago, and now, everything she believes in is the complete opposite of what she used to. And somehow, she feels like she doesn't even have to explain why. It's like she expects everyone to just go along with it. Unbelievable! But let me know what you think in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a video. Catch you in the next one.